Welcome to Talk Sport. An honor to have a friend, a former Salt Lake Tribune colleague on this show, on this program. This is Kyle Goon. Kyle, how's it going, man?
Doing great. It's another sunny day in Baltimore. So hopefully, as the NFL season comes, there'll be more sunny days out here because folks are starved for a real winter.
So we could be talking about the Orioles and one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, but we are here to talk about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, who are annually in it, but in this Lamar Jackson era have not been able to get to the top. And I'm going to blame Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and Taylor Swift for that. But you know it much better than I do. Number one, Kyle, covering Lamar Jackson, being around him, what has prevented him from taking that next step if it's not Patrick Mahomes? What is Lamar Jackson as a player, as a leader, as a franchise face? Is there anything he still has to do to find a way to take the Ravens to the Super Bowl? And if you make it, obviously win the big game.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound kind of well, duh, but I mean, it's honestly just winning in the postseason. And, he's so fantastic in the regular season. He's renowned for his improvisational ability, his speed. Fans in London got to see him last year playing at Tottenham. And he just really has remarkable skills. And then it feels like when he gets to these postseason appearances last year, going to the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, just I would describe it as trying to do too much, trying to be a superhero in the game, and just trying to overextend his considerable abilities. And I think when you contrast it to what Patrick Mahomes does, kind of just does just enough to get the job done, makes the key plays when called upon. That's just something that I think when it comes to the postseason stakes, Lamar Jackson really has to meditate on and think about, because it just feels like when he gets to some of these playoff games, he's trying to win it all by himself, and you can't win playoff games that way.
The week one matchup kicks off the NFL season, and it is just a fantastic matchup to have Kansas City and the Ravens. The second that was announced, it was like, all right, you know what you're doing on that night. And having been around the NFL, covered the NFL for decade plus now, I often remember a team will play the season opener, the kickoff game, they'll lose it, the media will freak out, the fans will freak out, and then it doesn't matter 3 or 4 months later. However, we're not going to freak out, but I will say it does feel like an important game because of everything we just talked about. I mean, at some point, Lamar is going to have to do it, and what better way to start than playing the defending champs? Maybe Tay will be there. What is the feel in Baltimore? Obviously, that the game's on the road, but what is the feel from the fan base, from the community? You're writing for the Baltimore Banner, of how important is that game in the sense that the fans, the team does want to show to the nation that this will be a different year and a different outcome for the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really important, honestly. We were having a discussion and our staff preparing for the season, and somebody asked quite validly, do you worry if the Ravens lose this game, if fans are going to give up on the season? And I was like, and we went back and forth, and I don't really agree with that. I think people have despair and then regain it next week. But at the same time, I mean, these guys are the Chiefs are the big bad wolf of the NFL. They're just going around bullying everybody, stacking up wins and Super Bowls, and becoming the defining dynasty of this generation. Patrick Mahomes is right now, even though Lamar Jackson has won 2 MVPs, he's the defining quarterback of this generation. Andy Reid is even though he's John Harbaugh's mentor, is becoming the defining head coach of this generation. And I think the Ravens just kind of need to get over the hump at every opportunity. And obviously the stakes aren't the same. I mean, they gave up a Super Bowl ticket last year, and people are still salty about that. But what you do is you beat them at every possible opportunity. And I think it's great for the NFL to set up this week one, because I really think the whole vibe in Baltimore right now is, all right, like, we know we can get to the playoffs. It's just what we do when we get there. And any good, signs on the wind to that affect is promising and nourishing to this fan base that just has this terror about going to the postseason, especially against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Which is funny because they did not have that when they had Ray Lewis in the defense and Joe Flacco leading everything. The Ravens had done it before, but they also didn't have to face Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. We're speaking with Kyle Goon, sports columnist for the Baltimore Banner. He does a fantastic job. Follow him on Twitter at Kyle Goon. Kyle, one more for you, and we'll get you out of here. We're going to talk about Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. We're going to talk about Travis Kelce and how did the Ravens handle him. But if you're a football nerd, the matchup that I think is just fascinating is Andy Reid versus Mr. Harbaugh, the real Harbaugh, not the Harbaugh who left the NFL and maybe did some crazy things at Michigan and then found a way back in to a team that has no Super Bowl shot. The real Harbaugh, who is one of the greatest modern coaches, and in this, Bill Belichick steps down from the Patriots, ending a dynasty, ending an era. There's really nobody left anymore. I mean, Mike Vrabel couldn't keep a job. There's been a trend for years for young, bright coordinators, whether it was a Sean McVay type, Kyle Shanahan, DeMeco Ryans with the Houston Texans. How has your Harbaugh, the real Harbaugh brother, been able to do it, to stay with this organization? You're talking about somebody who is special teams expert, and he has truly put his stamp on the Ravens to where when I think of the Baltimore Ravens, I think of two people. I think of Lamar Jackson and I think of your head coach.
Yeah, and that's really funny. I mean, we're talking about a guy who got hired when I was in college, which was a long
Which was
time
like 5 years ago, by the way.
But I was a Ravens fan at the time and remember thinking like, okay, well, he comes with special team coordinator experience. What does that even mean? Because the thinking still is, okay, you're a hotshot offensive coordinator, or you're sort of this like dig deep defensive coordinator, and now you're head coach. And so you kind of didn't really know what to expect. And I think somehow John has kind of woven that to his advantage, where he doesn't have a signature imprint of, okay, this is a John Harbaugh offense, or this is a John Harbaugh defense. I mean, the tenets are really physicality, strong run game, not making mistakes in penalties and special teams, elite special teams almost the whole time he's been here. And that just wins football games, right?
Yeah.
And he's not so.
And in all weather situation, he can win in September, and he can win in January and maybe February.
Yeah, I mean, and how different are Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson as quarterbacks, and the offenses they've had to run. So I think his real gift is evolution, and in that sense, moving forward, I think it has to be an evolution of, all right, can you beat the Chiefs?
Yeah.
And I think there are some tendencies of his that also show up in the postseason, being uber conservative, or also not running the ball enough for a weird reason. So now they have Derrick Henry. So the joke around Baltimore has been like, well, now John Harbaugh won't forget to run the ball. So it's interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about what he's done. Obviously, I mean, he's the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL. But fans still want more. Unless you're winning that hardware every year, fans still want more.
One more real quick. How many yards does Derrick Henry run for this year?
How many yards? I would guess 1,200, 1,300. I don't think it's going to be like top end. And I think the Ravens are going to pick and choose a little bit. They like to rotate backs, but I mean, obviously you don't get Derrick Henry unless you plan to run him at least 250 times, right? So I think he'll be one of the higher yardage backs in the NFL, and definitely be a goal line threat. I mean, last year the Ravens had running back Gus Edwards, and he had a bunch of touchdowns, and he was more of a specialist, and now Derrick Henry is kind of like Gus Edwards on rocket fuel, right? So I think it will be a really interesting combination. I've bought into that combination of him and Lamar Jackson more as we've gone through camp. And like, this could actually work, but you never know until week one, right? You never know until you actually see it roll out and see how they actually do it. But I see the thinking, I see the vision, as they say.
Kyle, thanks so much for coming on talkSPORT. We greatly appreciate it. Maybe we can check in with you as the season goes on. You can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Goon, sports columnist for the Baltimore Banner. And Kyle, I appreciate it. It was good to see you again, man.